The saloon wasn't built for comfort, nothing in that part of the frontier was, but tonight it felt especially mean. The air was thick with smoke, stale sweat, and the bitter sting of cheap whiskey. Lamps hung crooked from the rafters, their glow barely reaching the corners where men hunched over tables, hiding from their own lives. The piano in the back had gone silent after the pianist decided even he had seen too much ugliness for one night. Lena stood near the door, her back pressed to the wall as if she wished she could melt into it. Her dress, once a soft blue, had faded to a weary gray, like the hope that used to glow in her chest. Her father had dragged her here by the wrist, his grip bruising, his breath hot with liquor. He didn't look at her now, not like a father should. He only glanced at her the way a man glanced at a tool, something to be used when needed, ignored when not. The bartender, a large man with worry lines etched deeper every year, leaned close to her father and said quietly, "That's enough for tonight, Jeb. You've had more than you can hold." Jeb's eyes, bloodshot and feverish, flashed with anger. "I paid you, didn't I?" he snarled. "You paid earlier," the bartender replied, trying to keep the peace. "That bottle's long gone." Jeb slammed the empty bottle down so hard the counter rattled. A couple of men turned to look. A few snickered. Most just kept drinking. No one wanted to get involved in the business of a desperate drunk. "Then give me another," Jeb growled. "Or I'll make you regret it." The bartender didn't budge. No more credit. Silence stretched between them until Jeb barked a humorless laugh. He swayed on his feet, then spun toward Lena, grabbing her arm again. She winced. "You want payment," he shouted to the room. "Here's payment." His arm thrust forward, pointing at his daughter. "You want a bottle? Take her. She's worth one, ain't she? Hell, worth two, even." Lena's stomach twisted. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in years. Tears were luxuries in houses like hers. A murmur rippled through the saloon. Some men looked away, ashamed. Some stared openly. A few exchanged glances that made Lena's skin crawl. One of the card players, a thin man with a crooked tooth, called out, "Jeb, that's no kind of joke." "Who's joking?" Jeb spat. "She's good for something." The crooked tooth man dropped his cards. "I ain't touching that. She's a child. She's 17, Jeb snapped. "Old enough to earn her keep." Lena squeezed her hands into fists to keep them from shaking. She could feel the room's energy shifting, calculating, deciding. That was the worst part, watching men think about you like you were something to bid on. Before anyone could make another comment, the saloon door swung open with a creak. A gust of cool night air drifted in, cutting through the suffocating heat. A tall man entered, dust clinging to his long coat and hat. He moved with the slow steadiness of someone who'd lived most of his life in the saddle. His face was shadowed, but his eyes, sharp, observant, took in the whole room in a single sweep. Coulter Hayes. Some folks recognized him, others simply recognized the type. A man who carried his own storms and didn't start fights unless someone deserved one. He paused just inside the doorway. His gaze landed on Lena, her small frame, the bruises peeking from under her sleeve, the trembling she tried hard to hide. Then his eyes shifted to her father, to the empty bottle, to the greedy desperation simmering underneath. "What's going on here?" Coulter asked, voice low but carrying easily across the room. Jeb puffed up, trying to appear bigger than he was. "Ain't none of your concern, cowboy." Coulter stepped in anyway. He wasn't one to be invited. He looked at the bartender, whose wary eyes told the story. Then he turned back to Jeb. "She's your daughter." Jeb shrugged. "She's mine to do with as I please." Coulter's jaw tightened. "Is that right?" Jeb smirked. "Got a problem with that?" Coulter didn't argue. Instead, he reached slowly into his saddlebag and pulled out a small leather pouch. It jingled with the unmistakable sound of coin. "I'd pay double," he said evenly, "but not for her." The room froze. Coulter tossed the pouch onto the counter, where it landed with a heavy thud. "That's for you to take your sorry hide out of this town and never come near her again." Jeb stared at the pouch, eyes gleaming with greed. There wasn't a trace of paternal instinct left in him. He snatched the pouch so fast it made the bartender flinch. But Coulter wasn't finished. He turned to Lena, his voice softened in a way that made her look up, startled. "You don't belong to him anymore," he said. "And you sure as hell don't belong to me. You're free." Those words, simple, steady, broke something inside her. Not pain, not fear, a lock she'd never believed could open. A hint of freedom she'd never dared imagine. They stepped outside into the chilled night, leaving behind the murmurs and stale air of the saloon. The sky stretched wide overhead, scattered with stars that looked sharper than usual, as if even the heavens were watching closely. The wind carried dust across the street, brushing Lena's hair against her cheeks. She pulled Coulter's coat tighter around herself. It was much too big, hanging past her knees, but its weight felt like a shield. Coulter didn't rush her. He stood a few feet away with his hands tucked into his coat pockets, giving her space to breathe. He had dealt with frightened horses and wounded men, he knew the value of silence. For a long moment, Lena didn't speak. She just stared at the horizon as though she'd never seen it before, or maybe she simply had never been free enough to notice it. Her life until this night had been an enclosed box. Her father's voice, her father's steps, her father's anger. The open air felt foreign. Coulter finally asked, gently, "You cold?" She nodded, but the cold wasn't what made her tremble. I don't know what to do now." "You don't owe anyone a decision tonight," Coulter replied. "You just need to get somewhere safe. Everything else comes later." Safe. The word felt impossible, like something other people had but she didn't. "Where would I go?" she whispered. "I know a place," Coulter said. "A widow named Mrs. Denton. Runs a boarding house. Kind woman. Gives folks a fair chance. And she'd take someone like me." Lena asked, unsure, her voice cracking around the edges. Coulter's gaze softened. "She'd take anyone who's trying. And you are." Lena looked down, blinking quickly. The idea of someone offering a place without requiring something in return felt unreal. Her father had taught her that every kindness had a hook. She didn't fully believe Coulter yet, but she wanted to. They walked down the dirt road toward the stables, their footsteps slow and quiet. Lena kept her eyes on the ground at first, afraid the world might snatch her back if she looked too hopeful. But as they got farther from the saloon, she found herself stealing glances at Coulter. He wasn't what she expected. Most men stared too long or talked too loud. But Coulter had a quiet strength, the kind that didn't need to be proven. He walked beside her, not in front as a commander, not behind as a predator. Just beside her. At last she asked, "Why did you help me?" He didn't answer right away. He let her question linger, as though turning it over carefully. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Because I've seen what happens when no one does." Lena felt that answer in her bones. "My mama," Coulter continued slowly, "used to say the world's full of crossroads. When you see someone standing at one, scared, unsure, you either keep riding or you stop and make sure they don't fall the wrong way." He took a breath. "I've made the mistake of riding on. I'm not making it again." Lena absorbed his words, her heart tightening. Nobody had ever shared a truth with her before. People barked orders, gave insults, demanded obedience. But Coulter was offering something else, understanding. As they neared the stables, Lena stopped walking. The moonlight fell across her face, revealing exhaustion and something deeper, fear mixed with fragile hope. "He won't come back, right?" she asked. "My father, he won't try to find me." Coulter turned toward her, his expression steady. "He took the money. Men like him don't leave once they're paid, they run. And he won't cross paths with me again. Not if he knows what's good for him." His words soothed some of the trembling inside her. Still, the habits of survival were hard to break. "I've never been anywhere except where he dragged me," she said quietly. "I don't even know what I'd do at a boarding house." "You'll figure it out," Coulter said. "You're stronger than you think." Lena shook her head. "You don't know me." "I know enough," he replied. "I've seen folks with half your courage who survive plenty." She blinked in surprise. Courage. She didn't feel courageous. She felt like a girl who had lived too long on fear. Coulter reached his horse, a sturdy bay mare, and gently patted her neck. "She's calm," he said, noticing Lena's hesitation. "Won't kick or spook." Lena approached slowly, her hand trembling as she touched the horse's warm side. The animal's breath rose in gentle clouds in the cold night, steady and comforting. Lena felt her own breath fall into rhythm with it. "You all right to ride?" Coulter asked. "I think so," she said. He helped her mount, not by grabbing her, but by offering his hand, palm open. She placed her hand in his and let him lift her gently. Once she settled onto the saddle, he stepped back, giving her space again. Coulter swung up behind her, careful not to crowd her, leaving a respectful distance. He lightly nudged the horse forward. As they rode into the quiet night, the town shrinking behind them, Lena finally allowed herself to exhale. The darkness ahead didn't frighten her. For the first time, it felt like something new rather than something dangerous. She didn't know where life was taking her, or who she'd become. But she knew one thing. She was no longer walking backward into the shadows her father left behind. She was moving forward, and that was everything. The horizon was just beginning to glow when the first soft blush of morning broke across the fields. The prairie stretched endlessly, a rolling sweep of gold and gray that shimmered as the sun slowly climbed. Lena had never seen a sunrise without dread attached to it. Sunrise meant work, yelling, or the ache of surviving another day. But from the saddle of Coulter's horse, wrapped in his coat, it felt different. New, like the world was quietly offering her a beginning she didn't have to run from. Coulter kept the pace slow, giving her time to look around and breathe. He didn't talk much, he didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't heavy, it was gentle, like the air finally clearing after a storm. About an hour into their ride, Lena shifted slightly, careful not to touch him. "It's beautiful," she murmured, almost afraid to admit it. Coulter glanced at the sunrise. "Most folks never look long enough to notice," he replied. "They're too busy rushing somewhere." Lena watched the morning light spill across the prairie grass, turning it into waves of copper. She wondered how many sunrises she'd missed because her father had kept her inside or she'd been too tired to care. "Do you think," she said softly, "that people can change their lives? Not just survive, but really change them?" Coulter let the question settle before answering. "Yeah," he said simply. "If someone gives them a fair chance, and they take it." Lena nodded, storing the words somewhere deep. She wasn't sure if she believed them yet, but they felt like something she could grow into. As they continued, the land slowly shifted. Hills rose toward the horizon, dotted with rocky outcrops and patches of stubborn sagebrush. In the distance, a curl of smoke lifted into the crisp air, the sign of a home. "That's the Denton place," Coulter said. "We're close." Lena tensed a little. What if she doesn't like me? What if she asks questions I can't answer? "She's not the kind who judges scars," Coulter replied. "And you don't owe your whole story to anyone on your first day. You share what you choose, when you choose." The reassurance loosened the knot in Lena's chest. As they crested the last hill, the boarding house came into full view. It was small but well cared for, a little white farmhouse with a wraparound porch, rose bushes climbing the railings, and laundry fluttering from a line in the yard. Chickens scratched near the steps. A dog lay in the shade of the porch, tail thumping lazily when it spotted Coulter. The place looked warm, alive, safe. As they reached the front gate, Lena's breath caught. "I've never lived anywhere that had flowers," she whispered. Coulter's voice softened. "Then you're already doing better than yesterday." He helped her down from the horse in the same careful way he had before, offering his hand, not grabbing. When her boots touched the ground, her knees wobbled, not from fear but from the weight of stepping into a place where no one knew her past. "Mrs. Denton opened the screen door with a warm smile. She was a stout woman with silver streaks in her hair and eyes that saw everything but judged nothing. "Well, look at you," she said to Coulter, hands on her hips. "Thought you'd ridden clean off the edge of the earth." Coulter dipped his hat. "Not yet, ma'am, Mrs. Denton's gaze shifted to Lena. "And who's this young lady?" Lena swallowed, heart pounding. Coulter didn't answer for her, he waited. I'm Lena," she said quietly. "And I'm trying to start over." Mrs. Denton nodded as if that were the most natural thing in the world. "Then you're welcome here. Anyone with the courage to start over is already halfway home." The words sank into Lena's bones like warmth in winter. Coulter tied his horse to the post and turned to Lena. "Mrs. Denton will look out for you," he said. "You'll have chores, but fair ones. A room with a lock on the door. And people who don't shout unless there's a fire." A tiny, almost shy smile tugged at Lena's lips. "That sounds nice. You'll be all right," Coulter said. "More than all right." Lena hesitated, then asked, "Will I see you again?" Coulter met her gaze with a quiet steadiness. "I'll come back around in a few weeks. No rush, no expectations. Just to check in." The promise wasn't a chain. It was a kindness. Lena stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for saving me." Coulter shook his head gently. "You saved yourself. I just opened a door." Something in Lena settled at those words, something deep and wounded that had never been spoken to with such respect. Coulter mounted his horse, tipped his hat, and rode slowly down the road until he became just a silhouette in the rising sun. Lena stood on the porch, watching him disappear. She didn't feel abandoned. She felt anchored to her own future. Mrs. Denton put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Come on in, child. Breakfast is warm, and so is the water for washing." Lena stepped through the doorway. For the first time in her life, her heart didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a home waiting to be lived in.